Good afternoon. Welcome to the next section of the Accessing the Georgia Milestones. This is the elementary section number 4. I'm going to be providing resources and strategies for math, multiple choice, and short answer responses. I am Suwanda Coffee, the math mentor here at West Georgia RESA. Just to give you just another background of the reason why we have these webinars is, just to provide additional resources for our teachers, our administrators, or other curriculum specialists in our West Georgia RESA region, or just across the state, that you could use these resources to actually start preparing for your testing. So I'm just providing one resource a month, just to give the teachers an opportunity to spend that time in between the webinars to get familiar with the resources that I provide. Some of them may be new, some of them may teachers may be already familiar with, but this is just another avenue to gain access to those. Let's go ahead and get started with our norms. And first, you will be muted during the presentation. And the reason why you are muted is just so that we can decrease the amount of noise that we have in the background. You may type in your questions during the presentation. And if we are able to actually get those questions throughout the webinar. If not, then what I normally do is just gather those questions and consolidate them and try to provide answers via email back to you. Next, at the end of each of the presentations, there will be access to a recording. Those are uploaded to the West Georgia RESA website. I provided that link here for you. Or another way to get to it is to actually visit the West Georgia RESA website, home website. And once you are on the home website, then there is going to be a services tab. And if you click on the services tab and go down to recorded webinars, then you'll be able to access these as well. Let's go ahead and just give just a brief overview again of just the unique features that the Georgia Milestones will have on this coming spring. Do you have the selected response, of course, what we all know as our multiple choice, that is for your all content areas, evidence-based selected response, and ELA. We also have constructed response, and that is going to be on the ELA and the mathematics assessments that we see. And extended response will be for ELA and mathematics as well. And in the future, coming in 2016-17 school year, there'll be the technology enhanced versions for those testing. Now, what you have been provided with, of course, is just a brief description of what the constructed response as far as the definition is. And that is just in general term, for assessment items that require the students to have more thought put into answering the question as opposed to just selecting a response. The extended response requires more elaborate answers as well and explanation of reasoning. So that more of the evidence-based, the citing, the supporting, more detail oriented type questions. They allow for multiple correct answers or varying methods of arriving at the correct answer. And just an example, your writing prompts or your performance tasks would be examples of the extended response questions. Next, just some general test parameters when it comes to mathematics, criterion reference when we talk about those grades 3 through 8 or 4 through 8. They're just looking at those total amounts and the points values. The breakdown for each item type: 50 selected response, 2 constructed response, and then 1 constructed response that what we would consider as extended response. And your norm reference, the total number of norm reference would be 20, and embedded field type of questions about 10. So a total of items that will probably be on the test is about 73. Today, what we're going to be doing for the elementary is looking at a 4th grade standard. So the standard for today, it is MCC 4.MD7. This is something that if you are teaching the fourth grade, teaching fourth grade math, then this should be a standard that you have recently encountered or taught, or you're about to actually start teaching this very soon. Recognize angle measure as additive. When an angle is decomposed into non-overlapping parts, the angle measure of the whole is the sum of the angle measures of the parts. Solve addition and subtraction problems to find unknown angles on a diagram in real world and mathematical problems by using an equation with a symbol for the unknown angle measure. The lesson essential question for this standard is, how do you use addition or subtraction to determine the missing angle measure? We've talked about the standards for mathematical practice over and over in the webinars previous. So we're going to, of course, always address those because we want to, from the beginning, to ensure that teachers are incorporating these mathematical standards for mathematical practice into their daily lessons, and we want the students to become accountable for demonstrating those types of behaviors that we expect as well. So some of the first standard for mathematical practice that we always want to ensure that we are demonstrating as teachers and that we want our students to demonstrate is standard number 1. That says make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. Now, some teacher behaviors that go along with this is providing rich problems aligned to the standards. And you'll see the letters, the T keys, 1.1. This is a correlation of this standard for mathematical practice to the actual teacher effectiveness system, those standards that our teachers are being evaluated on this year. So that just kind of automatically should, just raise your enthusiasm to actually incorporate these because it is directly aligned to our teacher effectiveness system standards. So are those TAP standards. So when we talk about the 1.1, we're just talking about the effectiveness standards, standard number 1, or our TAP standard number 1. And if you have been informed, which I'm sure you have from your administrators, there are some indicators, I guess, or examples, if you want to put, or sample examples of what these behaviors are and what examples they are for TAPs. Then this is how they align. So 1.2 means the first standard, and this may be like the second indicator for that teacher evaluation standard or that TAP standard. Second behavior that teachers should be demonstrating is providing appropriate time for students to engage in the productive struggle of problem solving. I keep addressing this as well in the webinars, is that it is okay as a teacher to allow the kids to have that struggle time. It gives them the opportunity to kind of, have their thought process, maybe write their ideas down and to go back and organize their thoughts. So it's really okay for them to actually, have that time. Some questions as teachers that we may ask our students to address this behavior is, how is blank's way of solving the problem like or different than yours? Does your plan make sense? Why or why not? That's, allowing the kids to justify their answers and, actually do that peer review, is look at someone else's work and see, does it compare to yours or is it different? And if it is alike, how is it alike? And if it's different, then being able to explain that. Another question that a teacher may ask to address this is, what tools or manipulatives might help you? Some student behaviors that we want to see our students demonstrate is read the problem carefully. We definitely want them to be able to do that and understand what it is that they are supposed to be doing in the end when it comes to the question. Checking answers and making sure solutions are reasonable and make sense. We definitely want them to be able to do that, because if the students are able to, check their answers and think about, does my answer make sense? Then we understand that they have a good grasp of what's expected. And lastly, discuss the meaning of the problem with classmates. It's always good for students to discuss their thought process with other students. They're more willing to do this than maybe with the teacher, so this is a good practice for them. The second standard for mathematical practice that is going to be addressed in this assessment item that we're going to be looking at is standard 2, reason abstractly and quantitatively. Some teacher behaviors that we want to see demonstrated is providing a variety of problems in different contexts that allow students to arrive at a solution in different ways. Also, using thinking aloud strategies as they model problem solving. So, as the teacher, you would, just talk out loud of how would you go about being able to solve this problem, and that will help the students to, become more comfortable with what it is that you're asking them to do. They are allowed to listen to you as you think aloud. So when it's their opportunity, then maybe they can mimic that as a starting point, and then gradually become, more comfortable with how they would actually go about solving it and being able to express that. Some questions that may be asked to address this standard is, what does the number blank represent in the problem? Also, how can you represent the problem with symbols and numbers? Some student behaviors that we want to actually see is taking quantities out of context to work with them. We consider that as decontextualizing. And of course, putting quantities back in context to see if they make sense. This kind of also addresses from standard 1. It's just being able to look at the answer and see, okay, does it fit what the situation or the actual problem was asking us to do, which that's considered to be contextualizing. The next standard for mathematical practice is standard 4, model with mathematics. Some teacher behaviors is providing opportunities for students to solve problems in real life contexts. That's always good. Is a good practice to maybe have like a real world problem as your do now, your warm up, whatever that beginning activity of your class is. Have that always to be a real life example that the students, because the more problems you have of this type, the better your students will be at the end of the year. Identifying problem solving context connected to student interests. Some questions that may help you address this is, can you write a number sentence to describe this situation? What connections do you see? So once again, we talk about those real life contexts. If the students are able to make the connection between what the math is and how it relates to the real world, then that's a better indication for us that they really understand what we have taught them. And student behaviors that we want to see demonstrated for standard number 4 is using appropriate tools such as objects, drawings, and tables to create mathematical models. And the last standard for mathematical practice that we also want to make sure or to ensure that we're always demonstrating in our classes is standard 6, that is attend to precision. And some teacher behaviors is explicitly teaching mathematics vocabulary. I think that this is very, very important that we are providing that vocabulary instruction to our students, because in math, they have to understand the language in order to be more proficient in the subject. And that goes, whether it's math or other subjects, but definitely in math, they have to understand the language. Requiring students to answer problems with complete sentences, including units. This is also another one of those behaviors that we as teachers can demonstrate to our students, allow them to demonstrate that as well, because that is going to be a requirement on the milestones, is whether it is on the constructed response or the extended response types of questions. They must do their explanations using complete sentences. Some questions that go along with this standard is, what does the word blank mean? Explain what you did to solve the problem. Some student behavior is communicating precisely using clear language and accurate mathematics vocabulary. Okay, let's go ahead and look at our assessment item for today. It is the 4th grade multiple choice short answer response assessment. Today's question is, use the information provided to answer part A and part B It says for question 17. Also to note that, as I stated at the beginning of the webinar, I highlight a resource of the month from different states, different um, item banks that I have access to, and is nothing that is just for me. I provide this just in case you're not familiar with it. Um, but this for this month, it is highlighted from parks. So this everything is going to be a park example, and so I got this from maybe their release items. So it's two figures are shown. In figure one, the measure of angle MSG is 105 degrees. MSG is 105 degrees. The measures of angle MSK, angle KSP, and angle PSG are shown in figure two. The measures of angle MSG is still 105 degrees. We see that. MSK they have is 32 degrees. KSP is 44, and then PSG is the missing one. So in part A, the question says, which equation can be used to find the value of y? So remember, in order to actually answer this question, we need to understand what is being done. So they provided us with the entire angle measurement, the big angle measurement, but then they also provided us with two of the three smaller angle measurements. So we know that when we add up all three of the angle measurements, they are totaling 105 degrees. So if you think about all of the choices, y minus 44 minus 32 equals 105, that wouldn't be correct because that means that we have some big sum and we're subtracting 44 and 32. With the multiplication in choice B wouldn't be correct, and then with the division. So remember that we're either using addition or subtraction in order to find the missing angle measurement. So we know that the missing angle measurement plus 44 plus 32 equals 105. So answer choice D. Then it says, what is the value of y? So once again, with our missing angle measurements, with y plus 44 plus, I'm sorry, I need to go back, plus 32. So we would just add up the two known, and we would subtract that amount from 105 to find the answer, which the answer is 29. Now, strategies to address the problem. There are different strategies that as teachers you all may have that is very successful for you. I've chose to highlight the ACE problem solving method. It is something that is being demonstrated in our state. We have a specialist here that she uses this in all of her presentations, so I thought it would be good to streamline this into my webinars to assist, because she may have visited your school and we want to ensure that this is one method. I've highlighted different ones in previous webinars, but this is the one that I'm highlighting this month. And what ACE is A stands for already know. That means you're going to highlight any key terms, identify what you already know about the problem. C is compute your work. Show your work, label, draw a model. This is very good practice for students that may have a difficult time with the understanding. Allow your students that space where they can write down all of their ideas, all of their thoughts, work out everything that they can. And then E is explain and writing how you got your answer. Once again, on the constructive response and the extended response, the students are going to be required to explain their thought process. How did they come up with that answer? I know some teachers are concerned, especially if you're doing it on the computer or something like that, but their explanation is going to be very, very important when it comes to these short answers instead of the actual computation kind of thing. Okay, So being able to, give them the opportunities during class time to do this is a great strategy for teachers. This is an example rubric. It is not necessarily a part rubric, but I have just highlighted it here, as I've done in previous webinars. Is It can just be something that you could use inside of your classroom. It is a 2-point holistic rubric, and if a student earns 2 points, that means that they understood exactly what was asked as far as the question. They came up with the correct solution, and they demonstrate a thorough understanding of the concepts or procedures that were talked about in the task. If a student earns 1 point, their response demonstrates on the partial understanding, which means they could have, for instance, they could have gotten some of the question correct, if it was multi parts, or they could have given the correct answer. But if it also asked to explain and they did not do that, then that would be a partial response. Okay. And then lastly, if you're using this as an example rubric, if you score a student with 0, that means that their response is incorrect, irrelevant. It pretty much does not demonstrate to you as the evaluator that they have a clear understanding of what was being asked to them in the performance task or the question. Feedback. I am a very big supporter or promoter of feedback in the classroom, and whether it is written or verbal feedback. I just understand how important it is to provide that to our students and to provide it frequently. You may not be able to give every single student feedback every day, but at least once every other week, the student you should be sitting down with you and having some type of conference with you about their progress towards the standards, towards mastering the standards. Feedback must be provided to tell the student their next steps in moving towards mastering the standards. This, I would suggest, must be in writing. Provide the students with, okay, what is it that you need to move to the next step, to the next level of mastering the standard? And if you have those students that have mastered, what are their next steps? We want to definitely make sure we have something provided to them as well so they can move on while the others are going back and either reviewing or just working on those things that they need to master. And lastly, use the language of the standards when providing feedback. If we, become extremely familiar with our standards, we want to use the exact language of the standards to ensure that we are pretty much creating a standard-based type of environment when it comes to grading, when it comes to assessment. So I always think about that. And then lastly, I always like to provide the web address for the resource that I've highlighted for the month, as well as the website again for how you access the previous webinars. Once again, we do have them for ELA and for math, so you can always log on to the West Georgia RESA website under the services tab and go down to the recorded webinars. So I do appreciate your time. And I hope that you're having such a great year. Testing season is coming up extremely soon. So take time out to go back and review some of the previous webinars and also, use some of the resources to help you build those great assessments. Thank you again for your time and have a great day.